Throughout my childhood, I moved frequently, and by the time freshman year of high school rolled round, I had already experienced around 7 different relocations. I had finally settled into my most recent move for about a year and a half and managed to find a close-knit group of friends from middle school who also attended the same high school. One of these friends introduced me to Sam, who was a few years older than us, but still joined our circle. Although Sam's towering stature and heavy build were initially intimidating, I had never been afraid of larger individuals before. Little did I know that this encounter would teach me a valuable lesson. Due to the difficult circumstances at home, I sought solace by spending as much time as possible at school. I often lingered on the campus until late evening with my group of friends. On a particularly chilly evening, as the rain poured down, Sam kindly offered to walk me home since our other friends had already departed. I considered it a gentlemanly gesture and accepted his offer. During our walk, Sam mentioned a previous incident from when he lived in California, where he failed to walk a friend home, resulting in something terrible happening. He left it at that, and I assumed he was merely sharing an anecdote. After that incident, Sam and I grew closer. We bonded over our shared experiences of living in California, exchanged phone numbers, and began talking late into the night. Sam opened up about his struggles with depression and self-harm, and I genuinely wanted to support him. However, a few months later, Sam made a grand romantic gesture, attempting to ask me out. He learned a Disney song on the ukulele and serenaded me in the cafeteria. Unfortunately, I was already in a relationship with someone else, and when I turned him down, Sam's reaction was alarming. He became strangely quiet, twitchy, and angry. I felt guilty for hurting him and tried to maintain our friendship. However, I started noticing Sam everywhere. Even when we hung out in groups, he would surreptitiously follow me, and I frequently encountered him while walking through town. It felt like he knew my every move. To ensure my safety, I asked friends to accompany me between classes, but Sam's persistent presence continued to unsettle me. He spoke to mutual friends, not directly to me, about a girl he knew in California who had the same name, appearance, and even shared my birthday. Each retelling of his story added more disturbing details. Sam's twisted fantasy evolved into a narrative where he and this girl were attacked in a dark alley by a knife-wielding assailant. The more he rambled about it, the more this girl resembled me. The vivid account suggested that she died on my birthday, bleeding out in his arms. It became increasingly apparent that he was weaving a sick narrative revolving around my own demise. Sam's presence and knowledge of where I lived made me feel unsafe. To ensure some level of protection, I clung to my boyfriend at the time, despite his abusive tendencies. I never felt secure at school or even in our small town. One dark evening while walking home, I spotted Sam following me, and it sent shivers down my spine. The fear became too overwhelming, and I decided it was time to take action. My friends convinced me to seek help from the school counselor, and we revealed everything. The stalking, the disturbing stories, Sam's admission of murder, and my genuine fear for my life. However, the counselor failed to take our concerns seriously and escalated the issue to the principal, who, lacking expertise in mental health matters, called Sam in for a discussion regarding the accusations. To my dismay, the principal concluded that Sam did not display signs of mental illness, and that I was not in any danger. It was disheartening to lose faith in the adults who were supposed to protect and support us. As a result, I abandoned the idea of involving the police. Instead, I relied on my friends to walk me between classes, sought refuge behind my abusive boyfriend, and constantly scanned my surroundings during my walk home. Over time, the school counselors even gaslighted us, to the point where it all feels like a fever dream now. The memories seem too surreal to be true, but my journal entries from that period and the shared experiences of my friends validate the reality of those distressing events. A few months ago, during a break in my sophomore year of college, I decided to visit my hometown. However, due to some relationship issues with my stepmom, I opted not to stay at my dad's house. Instead, I reached out to a friend from high school, whom I'll refer to as Z, to see if I could crash at his place. We weren't the closest of friends, but we had shared some good memories from our time in orchestra and English class. When I called Z, he seemed unusually ecstatic, as if he had just received a brand new car. It didn't strike me as odd at the time, and he gladly offered me a spot in the guest room. So, I headed over to his house. Upon arrival, his excitement was still palpable. He suggested various activities, like getting high, watching bizarre movies, or playing video games. Z's parents weren't home, and he was eager to take advantage of the opportunity to smoke. Feeling tired from the long drive, I contemplated going to bed early. However, since we rarely had the chance to catch up, I thought spending a little more time together wouldn't hurt. We played Smash Brothers, smoked some weed, and engaged in conversation for a few hours. As the night grew late, around 2 a.m., Z started asking me some rather peculiar questions. He inquired about whether I had ever wondered what it would be like to kill someone, or if I thought anyone would miss me if I were gone. Alongside these disturbing queries, he asked more mundane questions about my personal life, such as whether I had a boyfriend and how my parents were doing. It gave me an uneasy feeling in the moment, but I didn't fully comprehend the implications until later. Z might have been evaluating me for something sinister. The peculiar atmosphere made me crave sleep, so we concluded the gaming session and headed to the basement where his room and the guest room were located. We bid each other good night, and I entered the guest room, preparing for bed. However, I struggled with insomnia, as I had for quite some time. I lay awake for about an hour, until I heard movement outside my room. The walls were thin, enabling me to discern the sound of footsteps passing my door, and ascending the stairs to the main floor, only to return swiftly downstairs. It struck me as odd that I didn't hear the basement door creak open, which it usually did. Moreover, the light didn't turn on, leaving me perplexed about Z's activities. Eventually, he returned to his room, but an uncomfortable feeling lingered. Since meeting him that night, Z had seemed markedly different from the person I once knew. Driven by curiosity and a sense of unease, I decided to search for him on social media and Google to see if there was anything out of the ordinary. Initially, everything appeared normal until I stumbled upon his Tumblr account, which I found through an inactive Twitter profile linked to his name. What I discovered on his Tumblr was deeply disturbing. The account featured graphic drawings of mutilated human and animal bodies along with links to suspicious-looking websites that I dared not click. Text posts discuss topics such as murder, cannibalism, necrophilia, and torture. Disturbing photographs of guns, knives, and axes were also present, some of which seemed to be taken in Z's own bedroom. The most recent post, made about a week prior, was a text expressing a desire to find an easy target for violence, like a homeless person. Dread washed over me immediately. I became convinced that Z intended to carry out something sinister. It seemed likely that he had gone upstairs to secure the doors. I swiftly packed my belongings, thankful that I hadn't brought much, and opened the small window at the top of my bedroom wall. Desperately, I squeezed through the opening, with my legs still hanging outside, just as Z opened the door. Although the room was dimly lit, the streetlight cast enough illumination for me to see that he carried something long and slender, presumably a knife. Neither of us uttered a word. I quickly turned around, jumped into my car, and sped off to my dad's house as fast as possible. Once there, I immediately blocked Z on all platforms and reported his Tumblr account, but not before informing the police. To my disappointment, the authorities couldn't take action since the guns in Z's possession were registered under his father's name, and he hadn't actually committed any crimes yet. Nevertheless, I warned my other high school friends never to spend time with Z again. Since that incident, I've developed an eerie feeling whenever I meet new people. The realization that someone I once knew so well could harbor such darkness that they could harm me or worse has left an indelible mark on my psyche. I'm unsure of what Z is up to now, and honestly, I'm not sure if I even want to know. All I hope is that he's seeking the help he so desperately needs. I attended an incredibly old private school here in Australia, which bore a striking resemblance to Hogwarts rather than the typical modern American high schools. It exuded an archaic charm, complete with houses, coloured ties, housemasters and prefects. We even had these grand old chemistry labs that seemed like relics straight out of Roger Waters' inspiration for the wall. These labs had everything you could imagine and were an absolute blast, especially when we were trusted to handle volatile chemicals. One of my fondest memories was dropping magnesium into water. Such fun. On this particular day, we were gathering outside the chemistry labs because it was pouring rain. One of those rare Australian downpours that had everyone panicking as if acid was falling from the sky other than mere water. I was chatting with a few friends when one of them wrinkled their nose, sniffing the air and asking if we smelled something odd. Cue the immature fart jokes as my friends laughed and playfully waved their hands near their noses. To be fair, we were all just 13 at the time, and it was the perfect age for juvenile humour. However, the friend who mentioned the peculiar smell continued sniffing the air, insisting that something strange was in the air, definitely not a fart. After a minute or so, our chemistry teacher entered the building, clearly in a foul mood because he had just been caught in the rain. He walked through the sea of students until he reached our little group, sniffing the air with a similar expression to my friend. Suddenly, a look of horror washed over his face. He opened the door to the chemistry lab we were supposed to use that day, and I will never forget the paleness that overtook him when he closed the door again, slowly and silently. "Boys and girls, Please exit the building and make your way towards the dining hall in a single file, he said, trying his best to remain calm, although the terror was evident in his voice. One of the girls in our class pointed out that it was raining outside, to which our teacher shot her a look as if he wanted to hurl her through a window. She fell silent immediately. We all walked through the rain, proceeding to the dining hall. For those who haven't grasped the gravity of the situation, let me break it down for you. Someone had somehow gained access to the locked chemistry lab, possibly through an open window, and turned on all the gas taps, every single one of them. The room was filled with flammable gas. All it would have taken was a tiny spark, and it could have resulted in the deaths of hundreds of children. It wasn't your conventional scary story, and at the time, it was more confusing than terrifying. However, looking back, it sends shivers down my spine to think about how close we all were to a horrific, explosive, fiery death.